Well, after a couple of seasons of clamoring for it, this coaching staff has found a way, and specifically Kendal Briles has found a way to unlock Savion Williams' sense of potential. We'll talk about that next more here on Locked on Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked on Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, your team every day. Subscribe to the YouTube channel. You can also find us on your favorite podcast platform. I'm your host, Steven Simcox. Frogs win 35-34 over Texas Tech. They're now 5-3. And don't look now, but this game against Baylor is suddenly pretty intriguing because the Bears have also won 2 in a row. They're 4-4. They were kind of in a similar situation and honestly have been for the entire year. Dave Aranda's been on the hot seat for a while. The last couple seasons have been super disappointing for them. Last year, Sam Kahn from The Athletic basically said he went up there and made like kind of a Shark Tank pitch for his job to Mack Rhodes before the season finale. They gave him another year. They started 2-4, but they have won 2 in a row. They're coming off a victory against Oklahoma State. So the Bears and the Frogs meeting up in Waco, 7 p.m. kick. And both teams are playing really well. So it's been a while since these two schools have been in like a good place. I feel like the last few years, one has been up, one has been down. Last season, both of them were down. Should be a fun matchup, however, and we'll have plenty of coverage of that throughout the week. Do want to spend some more time, though, some final thoughts on Texas Tech, and I'll specifically talk about one player today, and that's Savion Williams. We're on year 2 of, man, this guy is supposed to be the breakout player. And in 2022, Savion Williams had a good year. He was on the opposite side of Quentin Johnston. They found a way to get Quentin involved and get his full potential reached. He ends up being, I believe he's a first-round pick to the Chargers. And he's having a better season in year 2 in the NFL. Had a rough rookie year. Savion was a good complementary piece, though. He was somebody on the other side of the formation who could go up and get 50-50 balls. They would throw those fade patterns to him. And he had a productive year. And then last year, the thought was, all right, here we go. This is going to be like the Savion Williams show now. He's wide receiver number 1. And honestly, that didn't really pan out. He had 573 yards. 164 of those yards was a game against Texas, which was really his tour de force before the last few weeks. He's going to get drafted just because of who he is and his frame and the physical tools, along with the fact that he's been a productive wide receiver at times. But that Texas tape, when the offseason was in full swing and you had like the draft film guys who are talking about different prospects in college football and saying, hey, watch out for this guy. Like when you're watching games in the fall, zero in on this player. That Texas tape kept coming up for Savion, right? Because he showed the ability to catch the ball, move after the catch. He also showed that ability in the red zone to use that big frame to go up and get the ball. And so this year, kind of the same thing. Like there was a hype train coming into the season of, it feels like he's the guy that's going to take over. He had some things going on last offseason, just with his family, that kind of kept him from camp and kept him from practice. And this year was a chance for him to be more fully engaged. And the thought was, okay, it's going to be his time to really shine. And in that Stanford game, it kind of panned out. He had 11 receptions, I believe, for 72 yards. But Jack Besh ended up being the guy that at the outside receiver spot kind of took over. And throughout the rest of the year, him and J.P. Richardson have been your leading receivers. And Savion's been a good complementary piece. But he hasn't been the type of player that takes over a game like we thought he possibly could. And I'm never going to pretend to be somebody that's an expert on things that I'm not. Obviously, I watch a ton of football. I think I have a pretty good handle on who can translate to the next level. I wouldn't say I'm like a draft guy. Like I'm not the dude who's going to be like, this dude's going to be first round pick. Tommy Fisher, who frequently listens and watches, he's really good at that. And he's given me some great insight through the years. And I have some other people that'll lean on as well for those types of things when I need help with it. But Savion's one of those obvious dudes because of his physical ability. Like if you were going to go to a lab and it's like, let's put together all the physical traits of your prototypical wide receiver on the outside that can go up and get the ball. Well, he's 6'5", he's 225 pounds. He can high point the football. He can go, take over and get those 50-50 balls and make plays. That's Savion Williams. But I was looking through his game log today because I've been really intrigued with what he's done over the last few weeks. They're running the ball with him out of that Wildcat quarterback formation. They had that really great play design where they put him in the backfield and they ran him on a little wheel route. Tech busted the coverage. He went 75 yards to the house. He's only had one game in his career where he's had over 100 receiving yards. And that was that game against Texas where he went for 164. Now, he's always been a great threat in the red zone and in those one-for-one situations where it's like, all right, you might have this guy covered, but I'm just going to throw this ball up there and he can go get it. And we saw that in the Houston game. We saw in the UCF game, he had two great catches. He had an amazing catch where Josh threw the ball behind him and he had to reach back, and like the body control, the ability to snag the football, all that was off the charts. And there have been those moments in his career where you're like, man, this dude is just outer worldly with the talent. But then you just won't see him for stretches of games. And it's always been just kind of up and down. It's like, you think if you could just find a way to give him the ball consistently, he could do some special things. I've been of the opinion the last few years, use him more in the short passing game because I've always liked what he did in the screen game, getting downhill, getting north and south, using that big frame of his to get extra yardage. He usually runs through that first tackler. And this coaching staff has been much maligned for good stretches of the season. And I'm not going to disagree with people on that. I've been critical of them as well. I think there's a lot of issues and a lot of things that still need to be improved. But the last few weeks, I've been super impressed with, one, their ability to just get off the mat and have some great effort and intensity. But on defense, I think Andy Avalos has changed up some things with personnel that's helped. And offensively, I mean, give credit to Kendal Briles for finding a way to get this guy involved that makes sense. And it's been in the run game. It's been in that kind of wildcat formation, running the ball. He had that 35-yard touchdown run against Tech. He's got 156 rushing yards on the season. Last week, again, led the team in rushing. And I don't know, you also saw, you saw him get stuffed on a 4th and 2 play. We said this last week when they had so much success against Utah doing this. The more you run it, the more you put it on tape, the more it's available to people to scout and to plan for. You're going to have to start coming up with some different things to do to make it work consistently, because people are going to start honing in on, okay, we know when he's in the game, they're going to run the football and they're getting downhill with him, probably on that QB sweep type stuff. They're pulling some linemen around. They're faking the pitch one way. That being said, he's such a physical guy that, like I said earlier, he rarely gets taken down at first contact. And so even if the other team knows, hey, this guy is going to get the ball, you still have to find a way to execute him on the ground. And running the ball with the quarterback, it's a little bit different because the numbers match up more in your favor. But you're never going to be able to block everybody, just a simple math of the equation. So it puts a responsibility on whoever the ball carrier is. We're expecting you to break one tackle. Now, maybe you get through untouched for a good portion of the run, like into the secondary, but then you got to outrun somebody, or you got to make a move, or you got to make something happen in space. Savion's really good at that. Running the ball the traditional ways is still not really working. And it's just been week to week, right? Trent Battle had a really good game a couple weeks ago, struggled last week, 7 carries, 10 yards. Part of that's the O-line. But it's like they'll plug in somebody for a little while and it works. It's kind of a different look, different dynamic in the run game. That works. And then next week, it's kind of non-existent. Like Jeremy Payne had a really good game against Kansas. And he's still done some good things. He had a great blitz pickup on that pass to Eric McAllister. I love what he can do. He had a great, catch. But I've been confused as to why they haven't gotten the ball more, because he's done a lot of good things when he gets in the game. But his usage has kind of gone down. It looked like they sort of gave Trent the chance of being the workhorse running back last week. Mixed results. Cam Cook has struggled. Trey Sanders, Dominic Johnson, basically out of the rotation at this point. But the guy that's been the most consistently successful, albeit in a small sample size, has been Savion. And they found a way to get him involved in the offense, get him opportunities to put the ball in his hands that isn't predicated on your traditional, like, receiver situation, running routes, that kind of thing. So I've been super impressed with that. Now, I will say, I want to see more wrinkles as the year goes on. I'd love to see him in the backfield more because I like the idea of, okay, can you match him up on a safety or a linebacker in space where they're having to move their feet and find a way to cover him? And also, Matt said this last week, in that stretch of games, this was 2017, when they had so many quarterback injuries, right? Sean Robinson goes down. Michael Collins goes down. They eventually get down to Grayson Muhlstein, who was undefeated as a TCU starter, by the way. But they eventually get down to him, and I think he was like 4th on the depth chart to start the season. So the offense is kind of scrambling, like how do we find ways to manufacture offense? And it became the Jalen Reagor show for a few weeks. They were moving all over the place. They were throwing him quick screen passes, moving him in the backfield. They would let him take those direct snaps, right? And it was successful. I mean, he basically, like the Baylor game that season, it was the defense of Jalen Reagor winning that game. And then against Oklahoma State, sort of a similar story. Offensively, so much of their production came from him in a variety of different ways. So I've just been super impressed with their ability to get him involved and keep him engaged in the offense. Because like I said, there's times where he makes great plays, but then he'll also have a drop that's just inexplicable. And it seems like, I'm not going to play sports psychologist, it seems like he can just easily kind of get down on himself and sort of get removed from being like right there where he needs to be mentally at all times. So having him move around the formation, making sure that you're kind of force feeding him the ball, it forces him to stay 100% locked in regardless of kind of what's going on. So I was intrigued by that, impressed by that. And I don't know what the future holds for him NFL wise. I think he's definitely going to get picked just because, as I said, those physical gifts. He was on Bruce Feldman's Freaks list this year, just as one of the best athletes in the country in college football. I think he's going to test really well at the combine, right? And that's going to help him with draft stock and that type of thing. But showcasing him in this way, and coaches, I mean, ultimately, like, a coach's responsibility at the college level is partly that. It's not the main thing. The main thing is winning. After that, it's building a depth chart that allows you to win consistently so that you're not just having a flash in the pan type of season. And then the final piece of that is developing players. But the first priority is you're developing players to be good college players because you want them to fit what you're doing, what your system is going to be at this level. And then if you're putting guys in the NFL, that's a huge feather in your cap because that's the type of thing that recruits are going to look at and say, man, that's where I want to go. Especially now when every recruit that you talk to, and you know, like the percentages are kind of low, but every recruit that you talk to is like, I want to play at the next level. So that's a huge part of, can you put guys in situations to be successful? And this was a specific situation where they had a guy who had a ton of potential. For most of his time in the program, it felt like he could do more, and they found a way to get him opportunities in non-traditional scenarios that have allowed him to really flourish. So that's awesome, and hopefully we'll see more of that through the last 4 games of the season. When we come back, can we just go 1 week without the turnovers? We'll talk about it next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We have great sponsors here on the Locked On Network that help us keep the lights on. One of those is FanDuel. FanDuel is where the game starts. You can go to FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. Don't forget, one $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. One $5 bet up to $200 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. NFL games, Monday night slate tonight. Major League Baseball, the World Series, Dodgers, Yankees. Dodgers up 2-0. We'll see what happens with Ohtani and his injury. NBA's in full swing. NHL's going on. College football, obviously. We'll check out that line later in the week for Baylor and TCU. FanDuel, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network, official betting partner of the NFL. FanDuel.com or the FanDuel app. I saw Steven Johnson tweet this. I think it was yesterday on Sunday. And I'm not going to be super negative right now because I do think it's honestly really impressive how this team has kind of gotten off the mat. And yes, the Big 12, like the whole thing this year has been, there's just a ton of parity. And week to week, you don't know what's going to happen. With the exception so far of BYU and Iowa State, it's just, it can be a toss-up, right? These teams in the middle, I think Colorado's good. I think Kansas State's really good. I think they blew a tire against BYU early in the season. But you just have these crazy results. The middle of the league is neck and neck each and every week. Houston beat Utah this past week, which was surprising. Utah's in a really bad way right now. But obviously turning this thing around, I didn't know if it's possible to be completely frank with you, and they've done it, which deserves a lot of praise. And we're at the point now where we've said this all year. This team has to cut down on mental mistakes, the penalties that are setting you back, the negative plays that are setting you behind the chains on offense, and the turnovers have just been a disaster. Tech came in as one of the worst defenses in the country, and TCU eventually found a way to score. I think they scored on 3 of their 5 drives in the second half after a very rough first half from an efficiency standpoint. But Steven Johnson from Fort Worth Star-Telegram, Josh Hoover has 7 picks, and he's fumbled the ball 6 times, which that's really crazy. I'm trying to place all of them. I know he had the strip sack against Tech. He had the fumble against Stanford, the fumble against Utah. The ball security has just been a huge issue. And I saw Travis Roeder, who he works for 365, and he mainly covers Baylor, but he also looks at the Big 12 as a whole. So he's kind of doing his early TCU preview. Okay, what does this team have? What are they doing? And he's like, Josh Hoover's a good quarterback, but his biggest issue is pocket presence, which that wouldn't have been my first thought with Josh. But I see where he's coming from. I said in the postgame show, I was like, that fumble, it was a result of holding the ball too long. I mean, also Mike Nichols got beat on the pass pro rep. But there was there were 2 guys coming from the outside. Nichols kind of got tripped in blitz traffic, and the defensive end got around him and made the play. But Josh had a lot of time to square up the formation, go through his progressions. Sometimes you got to get rid of the ball, right? And I think another issue is just doing too much. It's not even necessarily trying to fit the ball into tight windows all the time. It's on 3rd and 14 against Kansas. Maybe J.P. Richardson's popping open, but you got to either rip that ball in there and say he floated it and he got undercut by the safety, or you just live to fight another day. Throw the ball away. Even if you're down 24-14 and things feel like they're kind of unraveling on you. If you're scrambling to your right and you're on a dead sprint and you see Jeremy Payne has a stip on his defender on the wheel route, but are you able to make that throw? I guess he thought he could. But it's just that idea of, okay, we're down 10. We're down 17. We've got to get it all back. But that's not how it works. You have to get it back incrementally. It has to be, you got to stack up good plays, stack up good drives. And they finally did that. I think, honestly, once Tech kind of got a big lead, some of that pressure came off. And we've seen that the last couple of years. They did that against Oklahoma, did that against Texas. Couldn't close those games. But when the other team gets out to a big lead, suddenly this offense, which is going to have more space to work with as defense is, okay, let's just try to keep things in front of us. They can start going through their normal systems and making plays. But you have to find a way to get rid of the turnovers. It's just a killer. I think any conversation of changing quarterbacks this year is silly. It just doesn't make any sense. We've seen very little of Haas Haney. And I think he's got a bright future. I'm not knocking him in any way, but I'm just saying, we're in game 8. We've seen him in some pretty obvious, run formations. He's a great athlete. I think he's going to be a good quarterback for TCU. But throwing him in the fire now will be insane. Also, just the fact that, you're playing well suddenly. You can't just pull your quarterback when things are going in the right direction. That doesn't make sense. That being said, Josh's got to cut down the turnovers, and he knows that better than anybody. And this team as a whole has to find a way to play with less mistakes. And I know I've been saying that all year, and it's kind of to the point where it's like, is it even possible, or is this just their identity and who they are? But they're building towards a big year in 2025. I'm going to get to the listener's thought in a second about what kind of is this team's ceiling, how far could they go the rest of the season. I'll answer that in a minute. What I think the big picture scenario is here is you have a lot of returning production next season, and you're building towards something that could be special. So part of that is learning how to win, which I feel like they're doing right now. Another part, and that's some of the mental toughness aspect, just staying with it. But another part of it is find a way to start cutting down on these things, these self-inflicted wounds, these things that are hurting you on a week-to-week basis. And if you can protect the ball, the sky's really the limit for this offense, because they've been great at times. It's just a matter of finding a way to do it on a more consistent basis. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. We'll get some of your thoughts next. It's your team. We do it here every day. Game Time app. I've been looking at tickets the last few weeks for this Baylor game. Plan to be there at McLean Stadium as Frogs take on the Bears. Should be a good one. You can get tickets there. You can get tickets to theater productions, concerts, comedy shows, whatever it is that you're interested in. I've said it before. The great thing about the Game Time app, there's no hidden fees. They tell you exactly like what the money's going to be up front. They also show you, here's what your view is going to be from your seat, right? Which is awesome as well. GameTime.com. Download the Game Time app in the Apple Store or on Google Play. Use the promo code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. And that's Locked On College to get $20 off your first purchase. Game Time. They make it easy for you. Appreciate our folks at Game Time. Best place to get tickets on the secondary market. You can always chime in on the conversation, the YouTube comments. Also, you can tweet at me at SimcockSteven if you'd like. Taryn McKinney says Eric McAllister needs to be a starter or needs more game time. Defense looked good, but TCU needs to get the backs in the game going. Cook had one run, and the other backs did not get the ball much. On the Eric McAllister thing, yeah, I think he does need to play more. He had one reception, and it was an 84-yard touchdown catch where he made a beautiful back shoulder catch and then ran away from his defender. That was also a great throw by Josh Hoover there. I agree with you. I think they need to get him on the field more. I saw in the post-game presser he was talking about he's trying to, just stay patient. He's asking for opportunities, saying, man, I just want to see I just want to get one chance, right? I think he said he was praying on the sideline for just one opportunity to go catch the football and make a play. He made the most of it. And I know Sonny was asked about this last week in his Tuesday press conference. I guess it was after that Utah game. And he was like, well, we like Eric a lot, but he's behind a good wide receiver in Savion. And we spent a whole segment on Savion and what he can do. I do think in the name of creativity and innovation and staying on that topic, as a coaching staff, you got to find a way to get your best players on the field. So if your best combination of wide receivers is Jack, JP, Savion, Eric, even if it's not in some of your traditional formations, find a way to make it happen. And I don't know exactly what it would look like, but I feel like there's ways that you can get game breakers like that on the field, and it would make everybody's life easier if you could do it. So we'll see if they try that more as the year goes on. Jay Blangford said the Tech game was like the Bizarro World game at UCF, same score, same stadium. This time we were down 17 in the second half and won by 1 point. We'll take it. Yeah, it was. They flipped the script there, right? And I've seen some people this weekend. I totally get it. And they're like, man, if we could have just taken care of business against Houston and not blown that lead against UCF, this team could be 7-1 right now. I will say, I think sometimes it's been super frustrating. And obviously I'm with you. I want to win those games. I think sometimes you have to lose as a team to really figure out how to win. And it's difficult. Nobody wants to go through it. But were those losses preventable? Yes. If they won those games so they get tripped up by Utah and Tech, I don't know. Impossible question to answer. But I do feel like losing can be beneficial for you if you handle it the right way. And right now, this team seems to be handling it the right way. Now, that's not me making an excuse for what they did. I don't want them to lose. And I think they could have won those games. But at the same time, there are instances in sports where I feel like you have to take it on the chin and learn, like, all right, we might be a talented group. And I'm not even sure why this team would have this mentality, because it's not like they've just been blowing people out. But we have to bring our A game each and every week. Had a big emotional win against Kansas. Come back on a short, play Houston home on a Friday night. We got to bring your own energy and play with passion. And they didn't do that. And so they got beat. And then they had to get off the mat and figure things out. I think the bye week also just came at the perfect time for them to regroup and get it done. Some of you are saying that TCU has been projected to the Pop-Tart Bowl. That would be fun. Big Easy said that, and then I think Frog Fan said that as well. I don't pay attention to bowl projections really until like week 10 or 11. I would also say I think they're going to make a bowl game. You got to get bowl eligible first. You got to win one more. But yeah, Pop-Tart Bowl would be cool. I know the Pop-Tart mascot was a viral sensation last year, and K-State won that game last year. I would love to see a game. I mean, I'll be fine with whatever bowl they can make. I would love to see a game against a good Power 4 opponent. Like I saw maybe the Independence Bowl against Mizzou was one that they were projected to. Just something, you get those extra practices, you get a good team that you can say, hey, this is like, we're measuring ourselves against this team. We're using that momentum for 2025. That would be awesome. Ryan says he'd rather TCU play in the Pop-Tart Bowl than the playoffs. Well, I don't think you have to worry about the playoffs this year. So there you go. That's a good perspective, though. Apollo says, is there any scenario where TCU could punch their way into the playoff? Well, yes is the short answer. They would need a lot of help. They'd have to win out one, but BYU does not have a loss. So they'd have to lose 2 conference games out of their 4 that are remaining. Iowa State does not have a conference loss. They'd have to lose a couple. Kansas State would have to lose another one. Like Colorado would have to lose another one. You go down the list. I would have to look into exactly like this is what would have to happen. All the tiebreaker scenarios that would come through. But yeah, there's a path to Arlington. It's a very, very, very slim one. And I would say I think the chances of it are really small. But the biggest part of that is you have to win out. And TCU got to go win 4 more games. That starts this week against Baylor. Rivalry game. We'll start previewing that tomorrow. It's Locked On Horned Frogs. Your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.